Everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Audiomo Podcast, episode number 14. I have Dave with me, and this is going to be a first for me to be questioning somebody else about making a YouTube video. He filmed the demo entirely by himself for the Harley Benton DNA FX Pro. Firstly, Dave, how are you doing? And what was the whole kind of process like to make a full YouTube video from scratch?
It's going good to start things off. It was pretty good holidays, but glad to be kind of getting back into things. The YouTube video was super fun. I kind of was thinking it was gonna be a little more daunting than it ended up being, but it's just time. So I ended up recording the whole thing twice because as I'm sure you've done before. You watch it back and then go, wow, this is really, really shit. So we're gonna have to start over. But it went pretty smoothly, honestly. I talked about it in the video. There's kind of like three main issues that I have with it, and those were so apparent so fast that it was like, okay, I know where I can really lean into this video. And working with the tones is fun. It was fine. That part was cool. Obviously, writing tracks is cool, and the demo track came out cool, I think. But it was good. I hadn't worked with DaVinci Resolve before, and since I just was in the studio, I was working off the Windows computer, so I just used DaVinci, and it was fine. I couldn't figure out color grading, but you got that part for me, so whatever, it's all right.
Yeah, I've done enough of it where I'm just like, I know some generic settings that'll work, and it came out looking pretty good. But I thought you did a really good job, and it was very commendable that you went about it that way. For those that wouldn't know, obviously all of you, I was expecting to get about an hour to an hour and a half worth of raw footage that I was going to edit down. So when Dave sent me a file that was like 7 minutes, I was just like, wait a second here. So I opened it up and I was just like, oh my God, he actually filmed it himself. And it was like, I don't have to work today. This is kind of cool. But one thing that we talked about, and obviously since you did that demo by yourself, I didn't want to add anything to it as far as video goes. I thought it would be better if I gave kind of my input on here. When you were telling me about it, you said that for the purpose that I wanted to use a device like this for, like I use the HX Stomp for now, where I would have a send off to the PA system from the device plus my amp signal, and you told me that the IRs don't really work that great on the box. Honestly, it kind of took all of my interest away from the product, because that's like the one thing I would need it to do. I don't need 40 reverbs, but I need it to sound good out of that box.
Yeah, and it was honestly the most disappointing thing for me too. And I think, obviously I touched in it on the video, right? And we talked about this is how it sounds, and it sounds bad. Like it, not even like, oh, you can deal with it. It sounds bad. I think the reason I didn't go into it any harder was because it's probably pretty easy to fix with a firmware update, I would imagine, whatever's going on there. So I don't anticipate that it's going to be a long-term issue with it. It's also entirely possible it's something wrong with my particular unit, right? Like it might not be an everybody problem. I don't know. We got a couple of comments on the video about it, and some people said that they hadn't gotten the chance to try it. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, for me, totally unusable, right? Like there's just no way. There's no way I would use the stock IRs, and if the custom IRs sound like that when they're loaded, it's just not a usable product. So yeah, like in this situation, we're back to, okay, how do you solve this problem and then the IR problem on top of it, which is just like, why did you buy the thing? If that's the case. So disappointing that it right out the gate that works that way, and hopefully it's something that they'll fix quickly.
I think that it's something that can be fixed quickly, as you stated as well. And the other thing to keep in mind is the fact that it is, if you live in Europe, I think it's like $275, something like that. To get it to the United States cost $320. It's not something that's really breaking the bank, but I mean, the really unfortunate thing here to keep in mind is there are so many alternatives right now in that price budget. I mean, some of them, you're not going to get all those things, but if you're somebody like me, for example, where I'm just worried about having like a decent clean send go out to the board and have it be very reliable, I could just use an Iridium at that point and have like a dead on Fender going right in, and it's the same price at that point. And then as far as recording, it's a lot better, because then I have an AC30, an old Plexi, and the Fender that's it doesn't have effects, it doesn't have tuner, it doesn't have all that. I understand that, but the thing that it does like at a top level, and I don't feel like there's anything that this would do that would kind of get to that level.
Yeah, and I mean at the same thing too. I'm just looking up real quick. Like Moore has a multi-effects thing that would do everything this does that I believe is right in that same same price range. Yeah, at the GE 200 it's $300 too. And I know that all of their stuff works great. In fact, if I was going to use this, I would use a Moore pedal to do the IR loader, because they have an IR loader pedal that works great, right? But yeah, it's just weird. It's kind of what it's there for, right? And right now, with the way that it's being set up, the only thing I can recommend it for would be like what I just did with it, which is, stick it in front of an interface and run an IR in your DAW, which at that point, it's like, why even bother? There are so many software modelers that would do just the same thing that would be less, but yeah, I didn't really name them in the video, but there are other things that cover this area of kind of multi-effects and modeling that are in this price range that don't have that issue,
Well, I guess then one purpose that I could see in like a kind of customer that might be able to like this product as it is would be somebody who wanted to maybe use the multi-effects with their amp, but then when they're recording, that maybe they don't want to use microphones, but they don't have a problem using an IR, whether it's in Logic or Pro Tools or even Reaper or something like that. Like at that point, it's not the end of the world, because you can get good tones out of the thing if you do it with that workflow. It's just as the simplicity side of it goes, and we're really spoiled. We're really spoiled by the Line 6 stuff. Yeah. It's just like, it's very apparent when you have to take these kind of extra steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I do actually think that even if the IR stuff was working perfectly, I think maybe the best case scenario for this particular device is like a 4-cable method setup, right? I mean, the modeling is not fantastic. It's workable in a pinch. Like, I think the situation I think it would work best for me would be, somebody who's maybe in a cover band that does mostly kind of, clean to mid push stuff, right? And then maybe you have the occasional lead track where you're trying to do, some heavy solo stuff where you don't mind that the distortion is not top tier, right? That it's just like, it's enough to get you through the small uses you'd have for it, but I think the cleans are fine. They're serviceable. The mid-range stuff is serviceable, but really what you're after is the fact that you just have, reverb, delay, chorus, all that kind of stuff all in a row. And I can set up a 4-cable method pretty easy. And, it's bright, it's clear, who cares if you break it, because it only costs you $300, right? To me, that's the only scenario it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, it has a looper built into it too, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah. And the amp channel switcher, which is something you really never see on these things, which honestly is super cool and would be super useful. There have been times in our live playing career where I would have killed for something like that, because usually for some reason it's one of those features that only gets put on extremely expensive boards. Like you get those like 8 channel looper pedals that have them, and then the one that we bought that I bought for it when I was doing that was like a custom one that I had a guy build for me that would also switch channels while switching loops. It's just a weird feature that isn't in a lot of products. So that part of it is also very cool.
Yeah, so I mean, overall the summary here is, to anybody who might be curious, I'm not going to be demoing this. I kind of, once I said what I said about like what I wanted to use it for, and kind of how Dave went over things and the apparentness of actually going out direct into Pro Tools and having to do things that way instead of via through the actual box itself, it kind of killed that little hype for me. So in an effort to save the shipping, because shipping is absolutely outrageous, Dave's going to be holding on to that. But I mean, overall, I think that there is some potential for this thing. And like you said, with a few firmware updates, maybe it will be even better in the future. But I thought it was really good that you were just straight up honest about it. And, that's just how things operate when we do things. We're not the kinds of people who are just going to say things for the sake of saying them. So on to that point, I have to say, we did compare the Harley Benton Fusion with the Eart guitar, and I was blown away by the Eart guitar's electronics, but I did have a big criticism with that guitar that I got with them, and I stated this in both of the videos, was that the color of the guitar that they were advertising for sale that I bought didn't even come close to matching the color that I received, plus it didn't have a matching headstock. Now, they had to have heard this, because when I went to Amazon, they changed it. and now it's a very accurate representation. It shows exactly what I got. So I want to give them all the credit in the world for that. I think that that's awesome. And maybe it was from somebody else. Maybe it was something that somebody else said to them. But the fact that I said it, they followed me on Instagram, and then it's changed like a few days after that. I mean, that's really cool. That's super cool that they actually took the criticism in a good way, because a few podcasts ago we were talking about that, is you can take criticism in a, oh, well, screw that guy kind of way, and you know what I mean, be negative about it, or you could take it and turn it into a positive. So I just have to say I'm really appreciative to that. I wish more guitar companies in general would be more open to just listening to little things like that, because that wasn't a hard fix, and I'm really, really just happy they did that. And honestly, if the issue wasn't that it was supposed to be for a 4.5-year-old who was obsessed with hot pink and obsessed with matching headstocks, because my Fenders that have matching headstocks, that's a big deal to her. She's big into that part of it, man. And so it was just like, it was like, oh crap, like that's not gonna fly. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm trying to think of other times where the brand actually really listened to the community. Because you're going to hear a lot of times where they're going to be like, oh, well, we listened to your feedback and we did this. And people will eventually be like, well, nobody asked for that. Like, okay. Like, but I don't know. Can you think of any times?
I think no, you know, and I feel like I'm so jaded about this stuff too. Like, I don't know if you remember back in the day, before the Xbox, I think it must have been the Xbox One when it came out. And they were like, oh, hey, you know, it's going to be all digital. You're not going to buy any games anymore, right? And it's this great new thing or whatever. And everybody flipped out. And then like a couple months later, they were like, oh, you know what? We heard your feedback, and we're putting discs back in it. And I mean, the only thing I can think was, those assholes were never going to make a digital version. Like, they knew exactly what the reaction was going to be. Like, they came out and they were like, we're going to say this thing, and then we're going to take it back, and we're going to look like fucking heroes, you know? And I don't know. So, like, I feel like when that happens, it's like, I never know whether to trust it or not, whether or not they're really listening, or if it's, you know, part of some good guy, you know, marketing ploy or something. I can't really think of it in the guitar community who's like listening to feedback, or they listen to feedback after, like, you know, years of being shit on. Yeah, I don't know. You have any examples?
I could think of the Acoustasonic where I clicked on all the YouTuber videos and they said, Fender, listen to you guys. And it turns out, like, I don't know anybody that was asking for a Mexican version of the Acoustasonic, because the American one's really expensive. But apparently there was a large number of the community asking for those. Not American-made offset options, like, you know, an American vintage Mustang that they've never built. And, you know, just more options with Jags and Jazzmasters and guitars that people are really interested in. There was a lot of people that really wanted an affordable Acoustasonic. So,
yeah. I mean, does that fall in this category though? Because I feel like that happens a lot, right? Like, now we're getting the rumors about the, you know, the SE Silver Sky. Like, that happens all the time, where it's like, we want this guitar in a cheaper range, you know, like. But the Acoustasonic is weird, and we should talk more about that, because I want to hear your more direct opinions about the Acoustasonic.
Well, we've been over that. I mean, I just think it's a guitar made for nobody. Like, I don't see who buys that guitar.
I can think of dozens. I can think of dozens of people who want that guitar, and it's a guy who lives next door to my parents' house who plays in a rock cover band that it would be perfect for. It's just an acoustic guitar that sometimes can sound like an electric guitar.
Okay, well, my point wasn't to make fun of the Acoustasonic here. The only point I was saying was the way that they had some of the YouTubers, because obviously when all these people get sent all these products, there's kind of like talking points. I understand how this works. I've done marketing before. I've worked in sales. I get it. A lot of the people were saying, as like their kind of like way to get you to click on the video, like, Fender really listened to the community, or Fender listened, or I can't believe Fender did this, like in regards to specifically answering the question of
like how you did the move.
We want. I didn't know. I was fixing the back of my headphones. We want a cheaper Acoustasonic, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, did you guys want it? Like, did you guys at Fender, were you the ones that were asking for it? Because I never saw anybody. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I watched a lot of the Acoustasonic videos too, and I don't really remember it. They all felt very talking point, right? Like, everybody was just like, it was cool. Look at all these cool tones we can do. And then, like, They never show up in another video. And like, I don't know. It was a weird product. It was a weird launch. And yeah, I mean, obviously the first thing I think about it too is like, wow, it's way too expensive. But that's because like for me, like it only makes sense at like $400 where you would just be like, hey, it's cool. It does a bunch of stuff and it's cheap, you know, but I don't even think, I'm sure the Mexican ones are not $400.
I think they're like 1,200.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course they are. But yeah, no, I don't remember anybody saying anything bad about them because I don't really remember anybody saying anything real about them. I just remember people saying the stuff that Fender said about them, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to be sponsored by that company, man. That is just, it's just not in the cards. I can't, because I can't say, you know, what I really think, and I can't not say what I really think, if that makes more sense. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, I just can't ever see myself reading off a script, and like you said, it did feel like a lot of talking points, so to speak. But I mean, that's normal, and I understand sales, I understand marketing, I understand the whole game and how it works, and if that works for people, that's cool, man. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, and honestly, the better videos were the guys who figured out how to get those talking points in and then do something creative with it, right? And there were a few of them who were like, okay, can I challenge myself to make an entire track with the Acoustasonic? And that's the space it lives in. It's like it does all of these things. It doesn't do any of them particularly well, I think, you know, from what I heard. Like all of the tones are sort of like, ugh, like I don't really want an acoustic guitar that sounds like that, but it's cool that it sounds like that and an electric guitar. Like, you know, I mean, that's neat, I guess. And I could see a cover band that needs to be wildly versatile, but also like really compact or something. I don't know, you know? Yeah.
Okay, I will say this. There was one demo of the Acoustasonic that was awesome, and it was the only demo they needed. Unfortunately, it was not made for America. It was the Japanese advertisement for the Acoustasonic. Now, after you're done, Dave, I want you to watch this. You guys watch this as well. It was done by Miyavi. This guy, if there's one person, I'm like, okay, he could do it. He could do it. Just it was incredible. The fact that they didn't have anybody remotely as good, like as far as like just the style and like how showing off what this guitar could do. This was the perfect demo, and yeah, it was for Japan only. So, and because I follow Fender Japan, obviously I saw it. But anyways, I did not want to stick on the Acoustasonic this long. I don't have any interest on it. So let's talk about a guitar I do have some interest in, and you wanted to ask me about, and that is the new 77. What do you want to know?
Well, obviously I watched your video and I'm like, man, he loves this thing, right? So I'm trying to find any information about it. And this is just my classic, you know, anytime we talk about some kind of Japanese brand, it's like, hey, go dive into this massive ocean of things you know nothing about. And it's going to be impossible for you to figure it out. So like, if I want to go look at what their guitars are, where do I go? Why can't I find anything? Like, I saw some Facebook pages and stuff that I was like brief, and I don't know, just it seems very confusing. But like, give me how did you get this guitar? I think you said you got it used, right? Like, but like, if I want to buy a new guitar from them, like, where is the information?
Okay, this is complicated. There's a few ways you can go about doing this. If you want information and you don't want to buy it, and you just want to read about the guitar and the line of series, this guitar falls into the Japan Tune-Up series. It's new from 2020 onwards. Because normally that 77 Guitars only put out about 5 guitars a month total because they're entirely built by hand. Yeah, they don't screw around, dude. They don't screw around. So this is the first kind of endeavor of a more mass-produced instrument, even though it's still made in very low numbers. So if you want to find out more about those guitars, you want to look up Deviser, Deviser. That is
I'm seeing that now.
Yes, that's the parent company. You'll learn about them, Bacchus, Momose. There's a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of other really good information that you can get from them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it looks great. I love the blue. I do really wish it was matte. Like, that's just my... But they do have a couple here that have the wood finishes that have more of a matte finish that look fantastic. And obviously, you had a raving review, so I would love to get my hands on one.
Was it that obvious I liked it that much?
I mean, you literally were like, you know, short of licking the guitar.
It was just strange, man, because I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it like that. You know what I mean? Because I demo a lot of guitars. You guys you see, I get all sorts of different price ranges, and I could always find one or two things with guitars that I'm like that really could have been better, or I wish it came with this, or I wish it was like that, or like when in the case of the Gibson, there was nothing wrong with that. It is an amazing guitar, but I paid out of my ass for it. You know what I mean? Whereas this guitar, for what I paid and what I got back, I was laughing. I was playing it. I think it was one of the clips I had to cut out because I was scared of getting a copyright strike. I was watching the playback of it when I was in Final Cut, and I had to edit out my face because I'm just grinning. I'm just laughing, having fun playing this guitar. And I think the biggest difference to me and why this one like feels so different, it's not just like the fact that the fret ends are perfect. Like it's so smooth. If it literally is. It's a little bit better than my ES339 in that sense. And that hurts to say because I love that guitar. But the fact that it's so big, but it's so light is very uncommon for me. It really hits me into like almost like an acoustic guitar in that sense, because acoustics are nothing. They're feathers when you're actually sitting there like 4 or 5 pounds. This guy being that big and barely being 7 pounds, dude. It's a very rare experience because that Larry Carlton was closer to 8.5 pounds, and most of the Eastmans are all over 8 pounds that I play. The majority of the Gibson ES335 variants, same thing. Once in a while, you'll find one 7.5 pounds, but that's kind of less common until you get to the historic range. Those typically use the lighter wood. So just in this price point, man, I mean, the humbuckers aren't even bad, but I like the guitar so much, I'm like, I'm going all the way with this. I already have the parts. So, like, why not?
So, remind me here, because it's been a long time since I've looked at these new 335 and a 339 new. What are the costs?
I think the cheapest you're getting a 335 from Gibson is $3,000 now.
Okay, and then what's the 339?
I think 26.
What's the main difference on those? It's just the size, right?
Size, man. Size.
I didn't know if they did anything else too.
I mean, I think the pickups are different actually nowadays, but there was a time when they were both using the same ones, and there's some different variations where they both have the same pickups. Like a lot of them will have come with classic 57 classics, which is what mine have in it. It's a very popular pickup. Some of them came with the MHS, the Modern Historics, and then some of them came with your favorite pickup of all time, which would be the Burst Buckers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but so you're talking 26 for a 39, 3 for a 35, and then these guys come in, I mean, from yen, right? About 1,100, right? Maybe 12.
That depends where you look.
Yeah, but yeah, man, that's pretty good. I mean, yeah. What did you say the Eastmans are?
The Eastmans are right around the same price now, because the T386 is $1,000. So, I mean, it's very comparable. I mean, if 77 Guitars actually imported this guitar and had it available for sale in the United States from like a few dealers, I think the price would be much more it probably would be a little bit more affordable here, and it would smoke everything. It would smoke everything. Because as much as I like that Sire guitar, man, it is not even close. It really wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm definitely going to keep bugging you about it and see if we can, maybe get a little more out of them and see if I can get one over here, because I love the 335s, but they're just perennially out of my price range. Man, I'm not spending $3,000 on, what'll end up being a studio guitar, No,
it's really tough because that body style is super tough. Historically, it's always been really hard to find an affordable one. Outside of, if you were smart enough, you wouldn't have known this because you don't know anything about Japanese guitars. There was a time where you could get the vintage Yamahas that are still to this day amazing guitars, the Super Axes. Those ones you could get for a few $100 used because people are like, oh, it's a Yamaha, it's a whatever. No, those are great. Some of the Ibanez's, they're also really good. There's been a few brands, but there's not been one that's just like very easily accessible in the United States due to trademark and copyright. And so now, I mean, you have brands like Harley Benton, you have bands like Eart, Grote, things that you can get on a Firefly, things that you can get on Amazon. Then you have kind of like the next step up, you have your Epiphones, and now you have Sires, and the Eastmans are more available. And I don't know, it feels like now it's a lot easier to get into that, but it's really hard to find one where you're like, okay, I like everything on this, and I don't have like a headache, and I don't have to spend $200 on a hard case for it because it's an oversized guitar.
Yeah, it's weird too. I think that, and maybe this is just a weird association that I have with it, that because hollow bodies are like acoustics to me, there's like, this is not a type of guitar I would ever feel like I could cheap out on. You know, like I don't think I would ever buy a hollow body Benton and mod it. You know, like I feel like it requires a level of finesse that is not what the Harley Benton guitars are, you know, like, so, you know, to me, like if I'm going to get something like this, I either actually get a Gibson or do something like the 77 or an Eastman where I know the quality is enough to do the hollow body correctly, you know, and I know that there's no real correlation between those two things, right? Like it's not like a hollow body requires this. It's not even that an acoustic requires a level of, but there's like some, I wouldn't buy a cheap acoustic either, right? Like if I'm going to buy an acoustic, I have a pretty nice Taylor, right? And if I was going to buy another acoustic, it would have to be at that level or better, right? Because it just feels like there's a level of craft that needs to go into an instrument that's so, you know, requires that kind of woodworking to do, you know? And I feel like a hollow body kind of does the same thing for me, where it's like, I'm not taking, you know, the super cheap one. I just don't think it's going to work for me, you know?
Yes, I see things to a similar extent to you in the fact that like when I look at like Telecasters and Strats, there's like a price once they hit it, I'm like, I can't pay that for a Telecaster. Like there's no way. But on the other side of the token, like when I look at a guitar like, you know, a really nice semi-hollow body, full-size guitar, and it's done correctly, I'm like, that I could justify because in my head, I'm like, oh, it took so much more to build this. Yeah, you know, even though, you know, it's more, but it's not like, I don't know. But
they're still all being built on a CNC machine somewhere or whatever.
No, they're not. No, they're not. That's why you buy from 77 Guitars. 5 a month, Dave. They build 5 a freaking month.
Okay, just not from 77. My point is like, you know, when they're on the line, especially if you're talking about a Fender, right? Like a Fender, a tele thin line does not require more work than just a regular Telecaster.
No, it's just an F-hole. It's literally an F, but that's not a comparable instrument. You're talking about that's a solid body guitar with an F-hole cut out of it. That's not the same as a guitar that has a center block and the rest of it is hollowed out. Yeah.
But still, down the factory line, they're all cutting them out on CNCs and gluing them together. But in my mind, you know, there's more work being done on a hollow body that requires a company that's really putting in the effort, you know?
So you wouldn't want a Harley Benton one?
No. I saw them and I saw your review on them, and I know you were pretty happy with your hollow body that you got with them. It's I don't know, there's just something about the hollow body. I'm like, it just feels like one that you don't, you know, get a shitty one of. And I'm not saying the Bentons are shitty. It's just, you know, you buy those guitars for a certain reason. You buy it because it's like, it's this cost, I can throw whatever I want in it. And, you know, whatever defects it has, I can fix, you know, but I don't want a hollow body with defects. I want a hollow body that plays amazing, you know?
Yes. And and I did like that guitar. The reason I sold it, and I think I'm really picky about semi-hollow body guitars in general here, is because I don't want to be plugged in before I know if it's good or not. I know before I plug it in. And if I can strum it just straight up acoustically and I get like a big tone, I'm like, okay. I'm like, I already have something that the bass line of this instrument, regardless of what electronics are in it or anything like that, like I have a good quality built instrument. And it wasn't that the Harley Benton was built bad. It just didn't have life to it. Like it felt like a guitar that came out that they were able to sell for $250. Like for the aesthetic part of it, it definitely plays the part and it does get you like kind of in a ballpark. But I mean, I'm kind of in the same train of thought of you. Like that's the one style of guitar I would gladly spend extra money on because I don't know, just for me, I just want it done like right, so to speak. So to be able to get something like this 77 at the price that I did and feel like I stole it, because it genuinely feels like I stole it. Like it blows my mind. It just blows my mind. Those Japanese luthiers, those guys, that's such a good idea to have them do all of the nut work. The nut is smoother and cut better than both my stupid Gibsons. That pisses me off. And the frets are just, they're perfect. Like it's crazy. They did such a good job with this guitar.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm great. I'm glad that we found something new that we can rave about rather than just, you know, having the the classics that we shit on, or the I don't know. Like, as much as I like the Benton stuff too, you just are gonna get bored of hearing about it. You know, it's like,
yeah, my viewer said the same thing, because the problem is, here's how YouTube works, and you know this from yourself. It doesn't even matter about guitars. You click on one video about a certain topic. This happened to me today, and this is a funny story. I clicked on one video out of boredom. I needed something to listen to while I was outside that I didn't need to watch, and for whatever reason, something came out about a new Dragon Ball movie. And like an anime, and I love that shit. So I clicked it, and now for the rest of my feed is all Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball G, and I'm like, oh my god! I'm like, I clicked one video. Yeah. So the problem is, people say in my comments, they're like, please don't do another Harley Benton. Some of them, I mean, most people love it, and those are the videos that get the most views. But like my core audience is like, please don't do any more Harley Benton, because when I click it, all I get is that in my feed, and I don't want to hear about them anymore. Talk about Fenders and Gibsons, and I'm like, shit.
Oh. I mean, to their credit, I think the reason they're boring is because it's consistently the same review, right?
No, it's not even that. That's not even why they say it. Like, the guy just, like, a few of the guys just genuinely don't have interest in the brand, period. It has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, and I get that too. But I also feel like it's every time I watch one, it's just like, hey, it's pretty good. And I'd only paid $250 for it, so I don't care that I have to put $150 worth of pickups in it for it to sound good. And, you know, holy shit, there's stainless steel frets on it now. That's crazy. Like, yeah, I get it. That's their brand, is way too many features for way too little price. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to replace a bunch of shit, which is fine. That's exactly why you're buying it. But, like, you know, it's awesome that they've nailed this market, that every single guitar is like that. But at the same time, too, it's like, I'm never seeing anything I'm ever surprised by, you know? It's like, cool. It's like, what's one more feature they can shove into it for less than $300? Yeah, that's cool. It's great. They're filling a great spot, but it's just boring, you know?
You can find the negative in anything. I love it.
Anything. Yeah.
All right, so I'll ask you this. This is the start of a new year, and I was really happy to start the year with a guitar brand that not many people had ever heard of before. So going forward here, I mean, is there any, like, in your eyes that you think that you would like to cover and kind of give a little bit of more of a spotlight to? I know that people have been mentioning Guild. Guild's hasn't responded to me yet, and then Gretsch is another brand. But I mean, is there anything that you have on your radar that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think we got some really good response about some of the stuff we talked about at one point about actual workflows, which I think would be cool kind of place to dive into. You know, I feel like I see a lot of content around gear. Obviously, you see a lot of content around, like, you know, plugins and stuff. But, like, when it comes down to the actual, like, nitty gritty of moving through some things, I think that might be kind of a cool place. I think we talked about, like, some speaker stuff that could be kind of cool too. I was thinking about maybe I have a couple of the Slate microphones that do the modeling that might be kind of cool to do some shootouts with and stuff. But, you know, I don't know. Like, on this same exact thing that we're talking about with the Benton stuff, it's like I watch a lot of YouTube and I'm pretty bored, you know? So, like, I guess we just got to try to find some stuff that other people aren't doing, you know? And if anybody's got any good suggestions for some stuff that they haven't seen, like, you know, like, I need some new ideas, and you know, if we're the ones who got to do them, that's awesome, you know?
I'm bored. I'm sick of YouTube.
It's just like, you know, it's the same shit over and over again, I guess. It's like any medium that gets to this point, right? Like YouTube is cable now, basically, right? Like, it's just a series of TV shows, and they're all, you know, copying the same formula. So.
Yeah, well, I by some act of God, I still do this every single day. So I gotta find other stuff to talk about too. But, like, I don't stress it like that. Like, I don't get bored of it like that, because I don't know. I think the thing that helps me is the fact that I do move gear. Although that's gonna be greatly altered. We're gonna save this the whole selling in 2022 thing for a different podcast, because we could go for an hour. But I mean, that strategy is going to change drastically, but it did afford me the ability to be able to have all these different kinds of guitars that I wouldn't normally have on without having, you know, a sponsor to pay for it. So, I mean, I want to move things more into more of the production and the actual talking to musicians kind of stuff. So, Yeah, that's what's important. So this is going to actually be where we're going to cut off this, because this is a really good kind of transition point. We're going to upload the second part of this podcast at 5 p.m. today. It's going to be our album reviews, where all we're going to be talking about is that. We think it's a good way to kind of separate the two things instead of just cranking it into one like hour and a half thing, kind of giving each their own. If you wanted to hear about the gear, you clicked on this one. You want to hear about, some music you might not have heard before, click the one that's later today. Or if you're just really cool, click on both. But if you don't click on the other one, thanks for watching this one. If there's anything that you'd like to chime in with at the end here, Dave, I'll leave the floor on you.
I don't. Hope to hear you, or hope to see you in the next one.
What do you mean you hope to see me in the next one? I will be in the next one.
Not you, the listeners, the people listening. All right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a dad. I have to make bad jokes sometimes. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you later. Otherwise, I'll tell you tomorrow. Take it easy.